Vinny, all my love from South Philly. Mwah. Peace out, pal.
Vinny from South Philly.
You're watching Vinny from South Philly.
All right, welcome to another episode of Vinny Presents. And today, Westchester, we can maybe say embellish a little bit, say White Plains, but really Westchester, New York. He is writer, director, overall talented paisan. Here we have Don Capria. Don, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Vince. Thanks for having me on, man.
It's a pleasure to have you. Thanks. I know we tried to set this up, and both of our schedules are so hectic these days, but I'm so glad to have you on, and I'm sure my audience is going to love you. So let's jump right in. Tell us a little about yourself, your background.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm from the beautiful suburbs of Westchester, New York. So we've cultivated some talent in the film business already for many years. I think there was like a little film hub here when they were doing silent films back in the early days of filmmaking. But I started off in filmmaking when I was working in the music business as a music manager. I started directing music videos and writing short stories and treatments for those videos. And that kind of progressed into me wanting to make a short film. So I shot a short film, Buckout Road. I didn't love it, so we never even entered it into festivals, which is a big Westchester story, another horror story I started off with. And then I shot a TV pilot, a couple of other projects, and I took a break from all that for about 4 years. And I wrote the life story of Joe Colombo with his oldest son, Anthony Colombo. And this was really a kind of a two-voice book where it was a true crime biography about Joe Colombo, and then also this real memoir between Anthony and his father and how he knew him growing up. Really interesting story. And then went back into music management for many years. And then I think right before COVID, started shooting film again. Shot a TV pilot, a short film called Anecdota, another horror. And then arrived at the current project, which is Director's Cut, which we filmed in 2023. We had a theater release in over 100 theaters in Halloween 2024 and March 18th, depending on when this is going to air. It'll be available for DVD and VOD. So anywhere you can get a video on demand for rent or purchase, you can find our movie.
So Don, I mean, that's an exciting thing. You're writing about a person like Colombo. I mean, is it hard to get the rights? Is it hard when you're mentioning so many people that may or may not be alive? And to me, it sounds like, because there's some projects I would love to wrap my hands around, but some of the people are still around, and you see, how do you juggle all those moving parts?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it can be difficult. It can be easy. It all depends on, I would say, your honor or your respect towards individuals, because what happens in the criminal space is that once a person is convicted of a crime, they become part of public domain, just like an actor or an actress, where you can write about them and you can say things about them without having their permission. Of course, it's always good to get life rights when you're talking about someone. So I worked with Anthony Colombo, who was Joe Colombo's oldest son. So we had a lot of access through that, but also not just access to people, but access to personalized stories, which is always better to create a book that's interesting and intimate. I think a lot, I have an entire wall of mob books, everything from, the early generations, Black Hand Society, and then all the way up to modern day, Gotti era. And I think, sometimes the reporter side is very good because they have a lot of factual information, but, going in and getting that personal access is important. And what happens a lot of times with guys that pass away is, the writers take these liberties to say things about them or write things about them that they don't necessarily have evidence on. I've kind of pride myself when I'm writing in the true crime space to be a person that wants to support everything with facts. I want firsthand stories. I want evidence. I want police reports. I want something that can be tied to the truth, which is really rare to find these days in a lot of these books. But I think there's a lot of these stories that need to be told. So it's important for writers to go out there and investigate. And if you have your eyes on a story that you want to jump on, first try to find some family members. But if not, it's in the public domain space, so you can still write about it.
Was there anything or particular things that were interesting that you discovered while you're writing Colombo?
Yeah, I mean, Joe Colombo's era was in the 1950s, 60s, and tragically ends in 1971 with the shooting in Columbus Circle. So what we really wanted to do as far as a goal for the book was to unpack the conspiracies surrounding the shooting in Columbus Circle. And when you start dialing things back and you look into a lot of these, you have to mirror them up to different assassinations, from RFK to MLK to JFK. And when you start looking at the potential involvement of a government conspiracy you start to find evidence. You start to find things that can lead you down that path. There's no smoking gun, but there's definitely a loaded one. And what we started to uncover with COINTELPRO, which was Hoover's operation that he adopted from a CIA operation of, well, the CIA, what they did in the 1950s, they opened up this outlet where they would go into foreign press and they'd go into foreign government and they would do counterintelligence so that they can create disruption within a system. And for instance, how does that, what is that in layman's terms? So what Hoover did was he adopted that system, and it was first after the communists, and he would send information to them that was not true to create disruption amongst their ranks. He did this with mobsters, even against communists, where he would send, documentation, knock on the door at a social club and say, hey, we just wanted you to know that we have information that this communist group that's 3 blocks away is looking to bomb your social club. Now, when you tell someone some false information like that of the guys that we're speaking of in the 1950s, what do you think that's going to incite? So these were these dirty tricks, these scare tactics that COINTELPRO was executing against mobsters. And then in more current times, the style of that would be akin to if you have Gangster Joe on one family and Gangster Rob in another family, and they go, the FBI, to Rob and say, hey, listen, we have information that Joe's going to put a hit out on you. We had to tell you. This would create war between these two factions, right? If there was something that was boiling in the FBI by listening to wiretap investigations, understood there was already a riff, well, they could turn that riff into something that's flat out profitable for them. And it was really interesting to see all these different operations. And it happened all the way up into the Persico Arena Wars, even though that COINTELPRO was outed in 1971 and it disbanded because it was considered illegal in the mid-70s.
So we'll never know to what degree the manipulation and agitation and provoking law enforcement and the intelligence groups actually did. And not
no, what we got was in 1971, a bunch of students who were tired of FBI agents disguising themselves and showing up at rallies in Pennsylvania. These students were ballsy enough to break into a field office in Pennsylvania, and they were trying to find the identity of these guys, and they ended up stumbling across like a whole file drawer filled with COINTELPRO papers. So no one knew what COINTELPRO was until that moment. And they published these papers to news media. Now, this is a tiny field office in Pennsylvania that didn't really have a large COINTELPRO operation. So this is what was written down that we learned about from that small field office in Pennsylvania. You can only imagine the things that are written down in larger field offices, but not even that. What is not written down? What are these guys talking about behind closed doors that they're doing in illegal activity? So, yeah, we would never know the extent of it and what Hoover had accomplished. If the MLK assassination, if the RFK assassination were all part of COINTELPRO/CIA plots, it's something that you would never really be able to uncover because most of the people have passed.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Growing up, being street kid and being around a lot of elements, I always intuitively knew that there was more than just what you read about in newspapers or see on TV. There's always more to a story than what they're telling you. And obviously, as we've gotten more and more things declassified, we learned that there's a lot of shady stuff that was going on and continues to go on, I'm sure.
Yeah, the media has been controlled for 50 plus years in the United States. And what Anthony wanted to accomplish when we were writing the book, which was a Herculean task, was the media had spent, millions of dollars and they're basically funding a narrative. And at that time, it was that Joe Gallo came home from prison. He was down with the blacks in prison, groomed this black person, Jerome Johnson, to go in and shoot and kill Joe Colombo. That was the narrative that we were told to believe. That's to me is as stupid as the magic bullet theory, because I go and I start interviewing guys from the Gallo faction who told me he had nothing to do with this. And they would have known if he had something to do with this. Gallo was the patsy. They set this up to look like Gallo so that they could just put it out in the media. Gallo dies almost a year later. So now it's kind of case closed, right? This guy got shot and there's a gang war, and that's what we'll chalk it up to. But the more and more we uncover from that, the more and more you see that the motivations aren't there. The way that it was set up wasn't, there. The exchange of the money, they were leading us to believe that Gallo had some guy with a briefcase with $50K that was going to hand it off to Jerome Johnson after the shooting inside that press junket, surrounded by 30,000 people, that was the plan. That's what you sold to him, that he's going to take that bag after shooting someone and walk away with the largest police presence in the history of the United States. It doesn't add up. It never did.
Yeah, and it's not that we're more educated these days, but I mean, I just think that there's more information now. But now let's transition down for a minute, although I could speak about this all day, but let's transition now. Let's go fast forward now. How did you get involved, and what was the inspiration behind Director's Cut?
So I was still shooting music videos, here and there, not as a profession, but would do it for friends and what. And COVID hit, and no one was really doing any filming. And there was a band from New Jersey that wanted to shoot a music video, and they were like, you want to roll with us to this abandoned facility and shoot this video? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So I get in the car, drive out to the woods of Pennsylvania, like 3 hours from the city. And we get to this real small town, and this kind of old mining town that had gone defunct in the 80s. And the school that was there, the town still allowed people for art curation purposes to do events there and photo shoots and video shoots. So we filmed in this school, and I'm in like Pennsylvania. I mean, it was really, you could feel the energy that was out there. And I remember being inside the school with this really expensive camera, really expensive lens kit, and then just a couple of guys. It was a skeleton crew, thinking to myself, if someone busts in the doors right now, we're getting taken for everything, and I'm never going to get insured for a camera or lenses again. So I just go over and check on this one door, and it's locked. And then I think to myself, well, if we fight them, they're going to shoot us and kill us, and then I'm going to be dead, and no one's going to find me for weeks. So synapse is going off in between shots, and I go back to the hotel room that night, and I start drafting out the treatment for a movie about a director who lures these kids out to this facility to shoot a music video, and they're never going to return. So that was the basis of how I started Director's Cut. And then I just kind of, built on that idea until it became the movie that it is.
That's great. I mean, and that's the beauty of being a writer too, is you draw inspiration from things that most people would kind of just take for granted. That's a great story.
Yeah. I mean, in horror, I'm a huge fan of the genre. A lot of people would say to me, like, I can't watch that. I'm too scared. I'm like, well, that's why I watch it, because I get scared. So, taking a situation like that where my nerves got to me, I wanted to turn that into art. Like, I feel this way. Well, let me make people feel uncomfortable in this abandoned place in a film.
Maybe it's our generation because we're around the same age, but I mean, I grew up on Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, I really enjoyed that period of time, especially like early 80s, mid 80s, like that type of horror movie. Then
yeah, the rise of the slasher films was a great, let's not kid each other. The 80s was a great time to be alive. We had everything at our fingertips, from the coolest new genres of music to film. Style wise, I think maybe the 90s was a little bit better, but I was so in heaven watching all of these horrible films and just like enamored by all of it. And I don't even think it is like it is today, where kids like horror because society is in a weird place. I think it was just that the creatives that came out of the 70s that wanted to make these films just had so much to say.
Just a great period. It really was. I agree with you. It was a great time for movies. I mean, I loved growing up on a lot of John Candy movies, and a lot of the. I mean, look, you talk about comedy. What a decade for comedy, for horror. You talk about
coming of age. John Hughes. Like how many films that guy did. The Breakfast Club, and it was like, it was just such a good time. And probably my all-time favorite youth movie, The Goonies. Like that movie still holds up today. Lost Boys. Yeah. Now,
here's the big question: how do we land the extremely talented Louis Lombardi to be a part of this?
Well, I mean, Louis and I had known each other through his cousin for many. Louis from the Bronx. I'm from Westchester, so those two are kind of cousins, even though we're considered upstate. But he had a cousin that I knew, and he had introduced us years ago, and I had other friends that knew Lou too. So when I was in the music business, I would travel to LA, and Lou was one of the first people that I met that was from New York, that was like, had it going on out there. And he was just always so kind, and he has a really great energy about him. And he's the kind of guy, which you learn after dealing with people that live in Hollywood, he's the kind of guy that picks up the phone. And that's a very rare thing out there. Don't ask for anyone to pick you up at the airport that lives in LA, because they'll say yes. And at the last minute, I can't make it. So Louis, we talked, and we developed a friendship over years. And when I started shooting things, including Westchester, the TV pilot and all that, he would just lend me as much advice as he could and tell me, take that road, don't take that road. I've been down that road. So we never really got a chance to work together on something, but he became a really good friend and, mentored me through a lot of different questions that I had in the business being, a beginner. And when I was writing, it was COVID, and I knew a lot of people weren't really doing anything. And I thought, immediately about shooting this film because it was going to be low budget. And I thought, well, who do I have access to? And when I thought about Louis and I thought about Mr. Director's character, I really saw him. I saw him as this gregarious, funny guy that's really also awkward and slimy at the same time, that these young kids would kind of want to play with a little bit and get this free video. But then beneath all of that, there's this other layer that they have no idea what they're actually dealing with. And for Louis to play that part, I think, the transition was a lot of fun for him. And when he read the script, he really liked it. So, we put together a low budget. He came on board as a producer, and it was a great experience because I think people really reacted to his character. And that is pretty amazing, is to like take it from paper and then see it on film and have people love him as Mr. Director. So, we're working on number 2 with him now.
And I have to say, I mean, I'm looking at a lot of I've been following this for a while, Director's Cut, but I see all the shots and the pictures, and I just love. I mean, Louis he just has that presence about him, and I agree. I'm very, all joking aside, I'm very honored to call Louis a friend also, and he's just like you said, he's right there. If I call him, I need advice. He spent hours on the phone with me, just kind of giving me advice that nobody else would give you, and he's been there. He's very generous with his time if he likes you. So
yeah,
get out to Louis, good guy.
Yeah, I think people really need to see him in this also because I am biased because it's my movie, but this is no Lou Lombardi that you've ever seen before. This is totally different. If you've caught him in many movies, he's done amazing things with those roles, but I really think that, he's reached a level here that it took a big turn. And when he took that turn, he really cruised down that road.
And I love seeing the versatility when actors do something you're not necessarily used to, maybe a different genre or whatever, and you're not accustomed to it. I love seeing the versatility and the flexibility of an actor, and it's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Now, what's coming up? What can we expect in the future? I know this is coming out, obviously, but what else you got cooking?
Well, I'm finishing up a screenplay for a few producers now, separate from this horror franchise, but I've been plugging away, and I'm pretty much close to finishing up the sequel to Director's Cut, which will be called Producer's Cut. And that kind of unravels. There's a mystery to be seen on the screen in Director's Cut about why these kids are being killed. So once you learn about that, we really don't pull the curtain back. And in the second film, we're going to pull the curtain back and really start to get into the backstory of everything that was happening. So that film we would hopefully finish and go out for private funding and shoot it by the end of the year. We have a great distribution set up with Regal and a few other big theaters. And we also have distribution with Byron Allen's company, Freestyle, for the digital side in the States. We're working on international. So, we're set up to make these movies on repeat. And I kind of built out a 7-film universe for a Director's Cut and all the characters. So I'm going to work on this for as long as I can and get as much as I can out of it because I love the series, but still writing other stuff on the side to keep busy.
It's fantastic, man. I'd love to see a Director's Cut franchise. It sounds like you're well on your way with that. And it also motivates me as a very new filmmaker. I look up to guys like yourself and others, and Louis, especially, of course, because I kind of, it's always fun to hear how you just get started and how you start to feel your way around, and then this happens, and you start to dots start to connect as long as you have that perseverance and you have that ability to do. And it's not easy making a movie. I say it a lot. It's so, as you know, it's very hard to make a movie, but it's exhilarating.
You're going to read your first draft and you're going to think you suck. And then you're going to finish that and polish that. And then you're going to shoot it. And when you're done, you have no idea what you did. So you're going to have your first cut and you're going to really think you suck. But then you polish that again. It's a process. It's the most collaborative process of art that we have in the world today. And, it's so difficult because you're dealing with so many different people that I think the key to success for me and I'm not super successful, but I'm happy in doing what I'm doing. So to me, that measures up. Was to make sure that the people that I was working with, I liked, because it just made it feel a lot better. You know, I'm not in it for the money. So the process is something that you have to go through with a group of people, and just make sure that you like those people you're going through it with.
Excellent advice. Now, Don, where can everybody find you?
Easy to find. My name on Instagram is Don Capria. And on Twitter, I think it's Don Capria 110. And we have the Director's Cut page on Instagram, which is Mr. Director. And then the website for the film is directorscutmovie.com. And that has like all links to everything. And it'll have the buy link on the 18th. The pre-order for iTunes is up now. And you can check out the trailers on YouTube by just searching Director's Cut horror movie trailer.
Fantastic. For those that aren't as proficient in remembering, just like I am, I'm going to have links to all that good stuff in the description box. So make sure you follow instantaneously. Follow Don, follow Louis, follow everything that they're about. And please support them, because that's what we need. We need more independent filmmakers that are doing great pieces like this. And if you're out there and you're not subscribed to me, please, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, Vinny Presents, and follow me on Instagram under Vinny from South Philly. Our guest today has been Don Capria. Don, it's been a pleasure, man. I look forward to hopefully doing something with you someday, and maybe even Louis too.
Let's work.
It's been a pleasure. We'll see you next time.
All right, Vince. Take care.